Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing all others. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for the board meeting.
Good morning. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call speakers' names in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last names. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these rules.
We will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you. I hope you all had a great weekend. I can tell you that we certainly did after the fabulous news that we received Friday, and I just have to put into the minutes, we are just so incredibly proud of our teachers, of our students, our families, our community, and we are eagerly waiting for middle of the month when the official school grades will come out. But just looking at the data, and Mr. McGowan's here to give you just a brief update. It's their hard work paid off. It really did. And again, we could not be more proud. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McGowan. He just wants to give you an update. And also, I asked him to again explain the difference between progress monitoring and proficiency, because I know that was brought up at the last meeting. And as he does that, if you would please reflect on the data we've been sharing all year, the iReady data, which is the progress monitoring, and then the QSMAs, which is proficiency. And again, our data that we've been sharing with you all year did align with what the state showed. So, and kudos to Mr. McGowan and his staff. They were at it Friday morning. They were here Saturday and Sunday, and so thank you for that. Thanks for taking care of all that. So go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I do first want to quickly address, and I won't spend too much time on this. I know that at last week's meeting, Ms. King had a concern regarding how much money we're spending on the creation of our QSMAs, our local assessments, and that we could be potentially double dipping since, and the comment she made that iReady might be giving us the same information. So I just wanted to clarify that. These two, iReady and QSMAs, are two completely different assessments. So it's not double dipping, it's not looking at the same information. iReady is a diagnostic tool, and easiest way I can explain it is the iReady diagnostic assessment assesses the student where they're at. It's an adaptive assessment. So if you have a 5th grade student, but they're working on a 1st grade level, that's where the questions from that assessment are going to go towards. Whereas the QSMAs is a standards mastery assessment. So even if the student is performing at a 1st grade level, it's assessing at a 5th grade level on standard, written to the item spec, just like the FSA will be at the end of the year for all students. So there is a big difference between the two. We do need both. By state statute in our reading plan, we have to have a progress monitoring tool for all students. That is what iReady provides. The QSMA is not a progress monitoring tool. It's not given often enough to be used as progress monitoring, but it is a indication of standards mastery. So I just wanted to address that. And the other thing I think that I just wanted to mention is that when you think about iReady, there's a lot that goes into that, because and when we talk about the amount of time students spend on that, we really need to understand the difference between the assessment and the online instruction piece, because there are two different components. And so the diagnostic piece is given 3 times a year, but schools have the option to purchase the online instruction piece for additional curriculum pieces, and a lot of them do that, but they're not one and the same. So I just, for clarification for future, when you hear someone say, if I have a student spending a lot of time on iReady, that does not just mean the diagnostic assessment piece. chances are they're also doing the online instruction piece, so, which is just an addition to that curriculum. So I wanted to point that out. In direct response to the question of how much it costs, so we did do those figures. It's a rough calculation, but for this school year to create QSMAs for grade levels 3 through 10 for all students, it cost us right around $43,000. A majority of that is for elementary school because we print those, because we mirror the QSMA administration after the FSA, and because elementary students take FSA on paper, the QSMA is on paper as well. So a majority of that is printing. The rest of that cost is bringing in teachers to vet and write new items, which we spent the entire month of June, all 4 weeks in June, bringing in groups of teachers so they can review the test items on the QSMAs, edit them, vet them, et cetera. And to put that, one of the reasons we went down this road 2 years ago in regards to QSMAs were we did look into buying a test item bank. So the world of test item banks have changed. It used to be you could pay for it and then you own the items. Now you rent them or you lease them. And so, and it's a license per student. So when we priced it out for our district, at a minimum, it was around $100,000 to get a test item bank. And then even after you pay all the money, you don't own the items. So when you stop the contract with that company, you can't use those items anymore. So this way, we have our own teachers writing items that we own the copyright to that, and then we'll have for future use, so we can continue to use them. So I just wanted to address that. Do you have any specific questions on that? If not, yes, ma'am.
I think everything we do should be results-driven. And we've done QSMAs for a couple years, and the district's ranked the lowest now ever in the history of this district, okay? We're ranked 61st, lowest we've ever been ranked. This has been going on for 8 years, since Jim Yancey left. When he left, we were like 42%, 42 in the district, in the state. Every year, we have declined. So has anybody thought of looking at maybe the top 5 districts, where 2 of those districts have students that are, they have more low socioeconomic students than we have, percentage-wise, to see what those districts are doing and how they're helping their low socioeconomic students, because there are a couple of districts that do have, we have like 86% free and reduced or something, I mean, whatever, however we scale it, and they have like 98%, and they're, way up, but yet they're ranked in the top 5 districts in the state of Florida.
Who ranked them?
They're ranked by their academic performance. It matches the DOEs perfectly.
But who, and how did we decline? I'm not clear.
Our test scores,
Our test,
our proficiency as compared to the state.
actually, it's up.
Actually,
I
it's
think you're
not
referring-
it's not growing at the rate that the state is growing. If our third grade through 5th grade, Dr. Mayer, if we continue improving at the rate we improved this year compared to the state, we go into infinity. It is impossible to ever get equal to the state. It goes into infinity. So I think it's time for some serious discussions with some of the districts that are high-performing with low socioeconomic students to see exactly what they're doing over there, that, what tools they're using, what curriculums they're using, and, it was a beautiful day when the day of Pearl Harbor strike, they struck us and we went to war. We have not gone to war yet on this. This has been going on for 8 long years. It is time to go to war for our students. And I chose not to say this on TV. I chose to say this to this room when we were not on TV. And this school board has committed to being student-focused. And it is time to go to war for our students, just like when the bomb was dropped on us in Pearl Harbor. On that beautiful day, we went to war. It was a beautiful day, the couple of days that the bomb was dropped on us with our test scores. I'm thrilled that we now possibly surpass the state in history. I think our history curriculum, our change to our history curriculum was a great decision, and I thank Dr. Mayer for that recommendation. I've always supported We the People curriculum. And she and I even talked about that curriculum before she was even elected. We both talked about that a lot, and the gentleman that has headed it up here. But there's only 3 other districts in the state right now, I think it's 3, that have more level 1 percentage students than we have. We talk about,
And that's third grade, right?
that's 3rd grade.
Uh-huh.
And so, because that's really all we had to look at until now. And I take a little bit exception to Mr. Christian's press release, where he stated when the 3rd grade scores came out, well, these scores are just, I don't remember exactly how you worded it. You can resend that press release because it's just in my head, kind of the way. Okay. That was just a small piece of the school grade, okay? And learning gains were to come, and that counted. We, by not withholding students, I've talked to this board for 2 years, and Dr. Grantham, I would like the percentage of students that we held back in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade this year. Because we've talked about this. I've come before you 2 years in a row explaining to you guys that we retain the fewest students, the fewest percentage of students in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade of any district in the state, with the exception of Manatee, and we're neck and neck with them. The high-performing districts are retaining, including the low socioeconomic districts that are in the top 5, are retaining like 10,000% more than we retain. I mean, a ridiculous percentage of kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. Now, I do understand how it all works, though. If we retain kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd graders, we don't get any learning gains the next year because those students never were tested. If we wait and we withhold 3rd graders only, in 4th grade, when they're in 4th grade, we will have dramatic learning gains. So our district is holding the smallest percentage of kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd graders back, but one of the highest percentages of 3rd graders in the state. That does give us learning gains. That does help our school grade.
Mr. Cummings, because Ms. Rover has to leave.
Oh, does she?
Can I call a point of order and we
Well,
need-
they ask us. They ask.
Well, they did,
And
and you
so-
made your point, and I think we need to.
I would like
Let
to-
Mr. McGowan finish.
I
And
would-
we need to move on
I
to the
thought he was
insurance.
finished.
He's not.
Oh.
To the insurance discussion.
I agree.
So I call point of order.
Point of order will be
And I would like
recognized.
that
And,
percentage
we
of
want Mr.
students
McGowan
that
to
were
go ahead
withheld
and complete-
kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd.
finish what you got to say, Mr. McGowan, and
Sure.
we're going to move forward.
Sure. So I'll be brief. I do have a handout for you. The first thing, just for a point of clarification that I wanted to let you know, I know that the article on Friday had mentioned that there was an embargo on these results before they were made public by DOE, but the article referenced that the district was aware for days ahead of time, and I want to assure you that wasn't the case. We received the email at 9-something that morning, couldn't release the results publicly until when Dr. Mayer emailed you all with the results. So just wanted to clarify that we're not withholding that information once it's released. In regards to the scores, overall, in a majority of our categories, our tested categories, we did see an increase in proficiency. The one thing we know about proficiency is the most difficult thing to obtain, and that takes years upon years. And growth is where we've been kind of saying all year, and our local data suggested is where we'll see improvements in school grade, hopefully, when they release in the next couple of weeks. As a quick comparison, last year, when you take out the categories that just maintained, there were 0, no positive or negative change. There were 10 categories last year that improved. This year, there were 11. So that indicates, even though a small number, more students are proficient this year than last year. And also, when we look at the categories that either declined or increased, that rate of change was better this year. We had higher increases than we did last year, and our declines, we did have categories that declined, were not as severe as last year. So overall, what that's showing is we have more students proficient, and you don't have more students proficient without them having growth to get there.
What percentage,
so-
what percentage increase was that,
For which
or more proficiency?
there were several. 10 categories had an increase over last year.
What did the state have In the same.
Increases
You
as
don't have to
well.
Tell me that, you can send it to me.
I've got it here for you.
That's okay. We won't take up the time now. You can send it to me. I'd like to know what the state increased in that same level.
Sure, I'll have that for you. So anyway, I'll pass this out to you. I just want to let you know we are very optimistic. As you all know, there's a lot that goes into a school grade calculation. The biggest of which, especially at the elementary level, is growth. And because certain students, if they're a low-performing student, they can be in multiple cells, and that's how there is, when you look at just proficiency raw numbers and then how school grades are calculated, that's why growth is such an important piece. I'll go ahead and pass this around to you.
And while you do that, here is a brief handout on how school grades are calculated. And remember, his work session on that is going to be August 8th.
So as this is coming around, and I'll leave you with this, because this is our district assessment summary sheet. So this is district level numbers. I will email you all of the school data as soon as we get that completed. That's probably 100 pages, so that takes us a little bit. But this is our district summary, and what you can see is year over year. So you can look at it in both ways that we've talked about all year. You can look at fifth grade last year to fifth grade this year, but we know one of the important ways to look at this is cohort. And for ELA, for example, we can see if you look at 2018 of third grade, and now they're fourth graders in 2019, they had a 3% increase. So when you look at the cohort, that group of students have a better proficiency, which means there was growth. So you can look at it, numerous ways. And again, I'll leave this with you, but this has all the tested categories, ELA math, all 3 science assessments, and the 2 social studies assessments. When the school assessment summary sheets are completed, I'll email that to you. And I think you'll see some very positive signs there of growth in some of our lowest performing elementary schools. You'll definitely see the increase in proficiency with those schools. And I'll email that to you as soon as they're available. Okay?
Thanks. I have a few comments and then just also a couple of, actually a few positives and a few comments. And the first one is, having been in the school system for over 20 years, I really want to thank everyone that has worked so hard. This is incremental progress, but it deserves to be celebrated. So I just wanted to put it out there. The second thing is that I would like to hope that for the past 7 years that we have been in a war and fighting the battle, because this is nothing new, and I would expect nothing less from any sitting school board. So it's important to me to know that we're all pulling on the same side of the rope. I like the fact that the QSMA data and the iReady data does seem to be reflective of the results that we're seeing. We still have a big issue with this third grade proficiency. We know that. It's encouraging to see that the K2 data was looking so good in reading. I've been hearing good things about CKLA. That's encouraging because we spent a lot of money on it. But we have pockets, and no one can say it can't be done. Look at Reddick, low socioeconomic. But you get the right team in there, and you provide that leadership, and you get growth. So it's really important as far as the retention piece is concerned. Kids shouldn't be moving forward if they're not ready. I agree with that. There's also a flip side to that is an early warning indicator of lack of success later. So there's a balancing act there. But personally, I feel like a kid should be retained when they're younger. I think it's just easier on them, and you can get them back on track. I'm looking forward to seeing the complete picture. I know that we've made a lot of progress in high school with our industry certifications and our career and technical education acceleration points. That's all helpful. It is what it is. So now it becomes our task to really target the areas that we still need to grow in and come together on that. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Yes, sir. We're going to move forward with this work session. We're going to go ahead and have our health insurance update from Ms. Lori Lively. Again, we're going to be trying to expedite this meeting so that we can, some people have to get to the airport.
Good morning, Vice Chair Cummings, board members, Dr. Mayor, Ms. Prestopino, and Mr. Gibbs. So where we left off last time, as you recall, you had tasked us with a what-if scenario. What if you only picked up certain portions of the buy-up plans? What would that look like financially for the board? So we're going to talk about that today. Thomas Buss, our servicing agent, is going to go through the numbers. Today, we have John Urbanic here with Florida Blue, who is going to brief you on where we are currently with the Advent situation. Again, without pressuring the board to make a decision, we will talk about whether or not you feel you are at a point to give consensus as far as moving forward towards whatever decision the board decides. So I'm going to have Thomas come up and start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning, all. We appreciate the opportunity to come back again this morning. As Lori mentioned, I have John Urbanic. He's Senior Vice President of Florida Blue with us today to give us the Advent Health Update, which, as we know, is a material subject matter for today's discussion. I think that's going to be a key piece as we progress through this. But as Lori mentioned, this is really a day where we wanted you to understand the numbers at a deep dive at your request. So in front of you, I believe you have these documents. Mr. Christian, I don't know that that's in the PowerPoint. It should be, okay? You all have seen this PowerPoint now 3 times. I'm not going to belabor the point with respect to your time and schedule. The subject matter therein has not changed. However, at your request, what we wanted to illustrate for today's consideration is the percentage variations of the cost factors. So, do each of you have this in print?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, very good. I think we're okay, Kevin. I appreciate the effort. What I'd like you to look at first is the projected annual board cost sheet, which is the 30,000-foot view. We'll drill in on the secondary sheet, which is the employee cost per paycheck. On the far right, or excuse me, far left, what you see is the same order or structure of cost as we've looked at before in our prior reviews. In the green column, that is where we are today. Okay, all 4 plans, all the PPO network of plans. As then compared, as you go from left to right, we have 4 different options, as well as the far right column is alternate A. So what we'd like to do is simplify for your consideration, what does each scenario result in an increased cost to the board based on the product portfolio you choose to consider implementing for 2020. We start the current cost to the board at $35.5 million, where we are today with the 4 PPO plans, 1 through 4. If we're to look at option 1, where the board's historical position has been you've continued to pay for Plan 1 at 100% of the employee rate. That column is to illustrate if you were to pick up 100% of Plan 1 only, single cost, not the family cost, right? Remember, we started at 24%. We've come down to 19.6, and then after an additional month of claims, which helped stabilize some, we're now at 19.19% above current. So that's the number you need to have in your mind as your starting point as we look through these options. Ms. Thoreau, did you?
Are there any new news or updates from Advent?
I think Mr. Urbanic's going to share that in just a minute, but I'd like to go through the numbers as you see this. We're going to share that with you, absolutely. Progression would be the word that I would use. Hard numbers, not yet. However, we're close, and I think things are moving in the right direction. But Mr. Urbanic came down from Jacksonville this morning to make sure he addresses that directly. So option 1, board picks up 100% of Plan 1 only. You see the $35.5 million current board cost increases $6.348 million to $41.9 million. Everybody following along okay?
Yes.
All right. Option 2, the board requested at our last workshop, if we were to illustrate not only the board picking up 100% of the single rate, what if you picked up 25% of plans 2, 3, and 4 across those other plans? That increase represents a $6.5 million increase over current, totaling 42.1. We also brought forth for you to consider option 3 and 4, which is if you were to pick up 50% or all of, which we had discussed at prior workshops. The 50% variation takes you to a $6.7 million increase, or 42.3. And as you see, these 25 and 50% ideations are really a pretty small increment as you compare the total annualized figures. And then option 4 is obviously the largest financial investment as we look to all of these at $7.697 million. And that represents keeping all 4 plans, all PPO, and that's consistent across all these options. I'll have you remember the illustration that we had where you had the matrix of plan designs 1 through 4, no change to any current benefits. Everything stays the same across options 1 through 4. Alternate A was the HMO consideration, where we take Plan 1 and we turn it into, thank you, ma'am. We turn it into your base Plan 1, which is employer paid at 100%. That would be keeping the cost across all 4 plans in the same version as option 4. However, we all have talked about the pros and cons to the HMO consideration, out-of-network coverage, travel, authorizations, new ID cards, the administrative lift, and the education that the HMO piece will have, while recognizing that the HMO network is still very strong and stable in the market here in Ocala as well as in the state of Florida. So that to say, if I may, I'd like to go to the next piece, and this is, what does that mean to our employees, right? Mrs. Stacy, you had asked for that information as a consideration of cost per paycheck. So this is the same structure of a matrix across the 4 options, as you'll compare to current in the green at the far left, options 1, 2, 3, and 4 at those varying percentages of the increased investment by the board, and an alternate A to the right. You'll see on option 1, PPO, board pays 100% of Plan 1 only. I'll draw your attention to the Plan 1 family rate from $300.86 to $397.25. As a reminder, this is per paycheck for the district, okay? As you go down from top to bottom, you'll see Plan 2, which is our first buy-up plan, currently costs $19.18 per pay period, goes to $24.08. The significant impact financially, is I'm sure very clear to each of you, is in that family category. Spouse also employed is a very unique tier, which is greatly appreciated by the district, where there is a set of spouses that both are employed by the district, to where that rate per paycheck based on the board contribution per employee, right, allows them that lesser number. So that's a clarification on that line item. And then as we progress from Plan 2 to Plan 3 and down to Plan 4, I'll not belabor the point, but certainly from a cost per tier perspective, as compared to your green column on the left of current, we would offer this as a material change to the employees per paycheck. As you look at options 1, certainly it decreases as we go to 2, decreases further, meaning less per paycheck to the employee. Option 4, an alternate A, as you'll compare to the green column to the left, as the board would consider picking up the increase across all 4 plans would not change mathematically any cost per pay period as we would assume for either of those variations. So this is the math, ladies and gentlemen. We tried to organize it in a fashion that would be hopefully simple to analyze, and we hope that you had an opportunity to look at this last week as it was sent. However, at this point, I'd entertain any questions on the premium cost per option, and then I would like to invite Mr. Urbanek up to clarify the Advent Health piece.
I got one question.
Yes,
Where
sir.
it says the spouse also employed.
Mhm.
Is that each one of their checks, or is it that amount split between the 2?
That would be split between the 2. So if my wife was a teacher, I'm a teacher, you as a board are contributing the per employee per month cost for both my health insurance and hers. If we were to cover, let's say, I have 3 sons, so if they're on the plan with us, our household cost, right, for our family policy would be that $122.20 today, or $161.34 if we were on option 1.
122.20
Per paycheck?
Per paycheck.
per paycheck,
Per
each,
paycheck.
each employee.
For one, right, so the whole family, for one employee. So I'm a teacher, my spouse is a teacher, 3 boys on the plan, family policy, $122.60 per paycheck for the
There's
whole
a
family.
There's a primary person of that.
Sure, they would select
Okay.
which paycheck it would be coming out of, Mr. Cummings, yes, sir.
That's why I was trying to make sure I understood.
sir.
That they weren't taking 122 from each.
Excellent question, thank you.
I got you.
Any additional questions on these illustrations?
By doing this, what does it change on our premium based upon the people that we have on it?
Well, if you look to the far left, Ms. Stacy, you see in parentheses to the right of each plan line item, Plan 1 single, you see is our largest enrollment, 3,685, right? So as we've looked at enrollment by plan, that would illustrate the impact to the volume of people across those.
Y'all just haven't done the math yet for us.
Those line items. Well, I think the math is represented in the projected board annual cost sheet.
Right.
As you look at both the increase to the board as well as the employee share. What we're trying to find as an option for you all is, from an affordability perspective, an investment to recruit and retain great people here in Marion County Public Schools, which I know is a priority for you, what is the best scenario for the use of an extraordinarily expensive line item? So the consideration of all of these options really is, I would suggest, as we've looked at the PPO versus the HMO network, that's scenario one. Are we comfortable with the HMO variations that I've described to you in the past? Mr. Christian, is there a way that you could go back to that PowerPoint, please, sir? Let's just cover that very quickly, because that is a material piece.
Oh, I remember when
Yes,
we
sir.
talked about the PPO versus HMO. The HMO, the only difference from the last conversation was that they would not have access to the Mayo Clinic. Am I correct?
Well,
Out of state.
that's a very key piece, as you'll see here, and that's representative in the fourth bullet point down in the HMO column. However, all those other bullet points are key for your consideration as well. So today with the PPO, with the, bless you, the nationwide coverage, it is the largest network in Marion County in terms of doctors, hospitals, ancillary providers, et cetera, right? Open access, Mayo is in network. Mr. Cummings, there's no disruptions if I'm in the middle of a therapy treatment, et cetera. As compared to the HMO, there is no out-of-state or out-of-network coverage. So, for example, if you're traveling, right, you're in Georgia, something comes up that's acute. Well, if you're going to present, you can only present for healthcare in an emergency room setting to have coverage on an HMO networked plan. As compared to the PPO, you could present in any level of setting in Georgia and have access as long as that's an in-network provider with Blue of Georgia in the
If
same
it's an
scenario.
emergency
right?
and they put you in the hospital in Georgia, they move you from the ER to the hospital room, then the hospital room's not covered?
No, ma'am, it would be. If the admission basis
to
or
an
trigger would be the emergency room, then you would be covered as you move through. Their intent, as we've clarified with Florida Blue, is to stabilize you. Let's suggest that Thomas broke his leg. It's happened to me recently. So if they were to stabilize Thomas's leg in Georgia and make sure that I'm healthy enough potentially to travel back to Ocala, where I may have an in-network orthopedic surgeon that could repair my leg, that may be an example to where everything that occurred in Georgia by way of an emergency room admission, I'm in good shape, right? But what I don't want to have happen is, in that same scenario, voluntarily or electively, I want to have orthopedic surgery in Georgia. My decision, that won't be covered. But if I'm unconscious and I can't make that decision, they treat me, they have to stabilize me in Georgia, right? All of that through care would be covered on the HMO. So I don't want you to have the opinion that the HMO is just that concerning based on that first bullet. It is comprehensive, but only in an emergency room situation. It's also a good segue to remind you the teledoc, telemedicine. If I'm traveling, that benefit now is applicable all across the country as I go for basic episodic primary care. To that end, as we educate the employees district-wide this October, if the HMO is a consideration of the board, that teledoc will be a very key piece as people travel that may end up on that policy to maintain access to basic primary care. So, Mr. Cummings, back to your question. The network, very similar. You see the 3% variance in network. It's very, very neck and neck between the PPO and the HMO here in Marion County, as well as across the state of Florida. However, the authorizations, the community adjustment, those latter bullet points, that's the heavy lift that I keep mentioning administratively. So today, the employees may be in the middle of that therapy, to use that example again, and if that straddles December to January of 2019 to 2020, I may have to resubmit my authorization on file for that therapy treatment if I move to the HMO, and that be reapproved with my care provider, and I need to make sure that that therapist is still in network with the HMO, right? So that's a piece to consider. The community provider adjustment is, the medical community's been very similar, or very familiar with the PPO plans that the school district has had for a long time, and they would have to adjust claims filing and the process that the HMO would employ. So to that point, that's the key as you look at the PPO to the HMO. So here's where we are. Yes, sir.
Is there an option, is there a way that we can actually offer the PPO and the HMO for those employees that would want to not have their costs
We looked at
increased?
that.
We,
Yeah.
that was not recommended by the insurance committee, but that was a fifth plan that we did offer. But because of explain why.
Yes, ma'am. And a good question, Mr. Cummings. So that was a variation we looked at. What the underwriters are very concerned about, and it's valid, is what's called enrollment shift. So if we were to create that fifth plan, and you take all of these volumes of people, approximately 5,800 people in Marion County Schools, and you say, okay, here's now 4 plans, now add 1, there's 5. Where will you and your family land based on your medical needs? Well, in adding that fifth, it creates a variation to where some people may buy down a policy and have the same amount of claims. So we're seeing less premium paid in, same claims paid out. What that affects in our business is what's called the loss ratio. As school district pays premium every month, Florida Blue's paying claims out, right? If the shift moves in a fashion in which the claims stay at the level in which they are now, but the premium reduces, meaning the enrollment shifts to a lesser expensive plan, it could adjust the risk pool that we've established and is strong, has performed very strong. We have an anomaly of a year this year. But the underwriter was very clear that that fifth option could completely taint the underwriting risk pool and could even more greatly affect the rate impact in 2021's renewal conversation. That's why it was not recommended. I hope that helped clarify to some degree. Any additional questions on these illustrations? Okay, if I could, let me invite Mr. Urbanek up to the podium. Mr. Urbanek is the Senior Vice President of Health Insurance Markets with Florida Blue. He has been in direct conversations with senior leadership at Blue Cross as well as Advent. So I wanted you all to hear it from the source today as to the status and where they are. Okay? Thank you, John.
Thank you, Thomas. And first, let me start out by thanking the school board for the partnership that we have with Marion County School Board. You know, it's been an honor for us to serve the employees of Marion County Schools for more than 20 years. And, you know, with this particular situation, you know, I certainly did not come here today to bring our negotiations public or anything like that. Thomas and I just thought it would be a good idea if we shared a few facts just to give you a better idea of what the current status is and hopefully a better idea of where we go from here. So, you know, we started negotiating or working to negotiate in good faith back in April. And unfortunately, we have not reached agreement at this point. What I will tell you is that over the weekend, we did see some positive development, and that senior teams, for example, our CEO and senior leaders from Advent are agreeing to get into some conversations this week to talk about how we can move this particular situation forward towards a resolution, hopefully. You know, healthcare costs, as you see, you know, continue to be a major issue. And for us, as Florida Blue looks at this, you know, we certainly have to consider the needs of the school board. We have to consider the needs of all employers in Marion County and even those buying individual policies. And so as we looked at the impact to rates that was a result of this particular purchase, you know, it was pretty clear that if the full rate increase was impacted right away, it would be a serious impact to medical costs, and it would be a serious impact to members of Marion County. And so essentially, we've been working back and forth to find ways to mitigate that increase. Late last week, we presented an alternative, and basically that alternative has 2 components to it, designed to help, again, mitigate the impact of the rate increase. So one of the components is that we're phasing in over 3 years an increase to rates for Advent Health. But there's a second component, and that is Florida Blue for 2 years will make supplemental payments to the hospital. Those are a substantial payment that actually Florida Blue would absorb, and that would mean that the hospital would get funding. However, those dollars would not accrue towards medical cost increases for the county. So again, a way of trying to find a creative approach to this and mitigating the impact for policyholders here in Marion County. So that's where we are essentially, as we've provided that alternative. We had gotten some indications over the weekend that there is at least an agreement and a willingness to get the senior leaders together to see if we can start to find some common ground here and begin to move forward. I think everyone's at a place, again, this has been going on since April, I think everyone's at a place of knowing that we really do need to resolve this. I mean, when you think about it, medical costs are critical, and if we don't resolve this, there really aren't any winners. But if we can find a way that the hospital, Florida Blue, and the folks in Marion County really win on this, that's really the right answer, and that's what we're looking for. So we'll continue to work in that regard, and certainly as developments occur, we'll continue to communicate those throughout the week. Any questions that I can answer this time?
Just want to say thank you for going to the mat for us, and thank you, Ms. McCall, for your hard work on this committee. It's a frustration that we still don't have hard numbers, and we've been talking since April, because it makes it hard to then make the best decision on behalf of our employees. And, you know, I don't want this to become the new norm where our employees continue to get less and less and less. That's unsustainable, it's untenable, and it's completely against what we're trying to do to improve our district. So that's a frustration. I like that we've made progress we're already doing a lot on the wellness side. And I know we talked about the mammo van, and out of that discussion came some alternatives to try to get as many employees as possible proactive on their health. That's going to save us money. So we're making progress, and I appreciate your hard work. I just wish we had hard numbers today.
Yes, thank you. And it is, we do apologize for the challenges that's really brought into this process.
Yeah.
But please know that we're doing all we can to resolve it as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
And we're not the only county going through this, correct? Correct. With this change with Advent and all those, the insurance issues.
I'm sorry, could I?
We're not the only county.
Oh, well, so there are other counties that are in a similar situation. You know, frankly, provider consolidation is happening throughout the state, throughout the nation. And so this is a fairly common occurrence. And you overlay that with the fact that the way healthcare costs work today, this system, and we've all talked about it, it has to change. And so there are a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And so we're in constant conversations like these. And again, I don't think that this is a case where people are fighting back and forth. We're trying to make sure that we're getting to the right answer where everyone wins. And that's the important consideration.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
That $2 million federal deal that they might cancel out on, is that reflected here? The $2 million employee, whatever it's called, the Obama thing for employee
It's the
thing?
health insurer tax, and it is still illustrated within these rates, meaning
So that could go away.
2.7%, yes, ma'am. Again, historically, that's been a fourth quarter adjustment for the feds. And we don't have those hard
How
numbers
much
yet
is
at
it,
this
2.7?
2.7%.
2.7%, so how much million is that?
1.184,
Oh, it's just, okay, I was thinking it was 2 million.
another million.
I guess I thought 2%, and I was thinking 2 million, okay.
Yes,
If we agreed, and I don't want a hardship on any of our employees, but for a long time, the school board has been able to really pay for all of the increases. And I just don't see that, if nothing changes here, I don't think a $7 million increase is feasible. But possibly, if we looked at the option 2, at 25%, that would save us $1.16 million. So what I say? Let me look. 1.146.
And with
As
us,
much as I don't want to have to put an undue burden on our employees, we also have to be fiscally smart about this. And I don't know if we can go back in and adjust if the federal tax goes away, if the Advent Health issue gives us,
Yeah.
a little more wiggle room, but I just, not in good conscience, can let the school board pick up the entire $7 million increase. I just am not comfortable with that.
Ms. McCall, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may, option 1 to option 2 and 3, as you look at the red line item, increased cost to the board of 6.348 at your 25% example, which is the one that you had requested of us as the illustration, that's really roughly a $200,000 increase at that additional investment. So in the big picture, that's not that $200,000 isn't a lot of money, it is.
So that basically, it wouldn't, picking up the 25% is not,
Well, I think it's important that you then go to the cost per paycheck and look at what that
Right.
means, right, compared to today in the green column. What does that money really result in for those families, right? And then I would also ask that you look at option 3, again, as compared to option 4, which is 100%. As a reminder, alternate A, the HMO, certainly affords the board the option at a $5.089 million increase over current. The option based on affordability is you're trying to make an educated decision at a much lower price point with the factors of the HMO at hand.
Excuse me, I just want to be clear that
Can you come to the podium? Please identify yourself, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Nancy Seaman, the Benefits Coordinator in Risk Management. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I just wanted to be clear that that HMO option means that Plan 1 would be an HMO plan, but Plans 2, 3, and 4 would still be PPO plans that the employees can choose to buy up to. I know we stated that at a previous workshop, but we didn't say it this morning, and I don't think you were here before, Mr. Cummings, so I wanted to be sure you understood that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
Because I was reading this thinking we would all go HMO.
No, it would just be the
Plan one
base
only.
plan.
it's
plan
the
one,
free
yeah.
plan, and that was the plan, the second choice for the committee. The first choice for the committee was that fifth plan, but the underwriters are telling us that's not feasible. So, I mean, I personally would want to see us go to the HMO, but I heard loud and clear at our last work session where you were not here, that several of the board members, that was not an option for them.
See,
So by going,
me personally, for the last 20-something years, I've been in the HMO plan, and I haven't had any problems. And many of the people that I work with for the state of Florida are in an HMO plan because they felt that it was less cost prohibitive for them, and their family was not such a burden. So that's why I asked about the combination, because I know with the state of Florida, there is a common, you can choose PPO versus HMO. I understand what you're saying with the underwriters. I want to do what's best for our employees to make sure that they're not, I understand what Beth is saying, because we can't carry this $7 million, $7.6 million. We can't. The district can't afford that. But there has to be a way where we're not going to put it on the backs of these employees either.
And the only way to do that is through
The H-
making Plan 1 an HMO, and then 2, 3, and 4 PPOs. That's the
PPOs.
only way to do both.
and that gives the employees the option if they want to go do
If
that.
they want to buy up to option 2, which is a PPO, they can.
Correct.
If they have,
Our recommendation, Plan A, picking it up to hold everybody harmless, to keep the stability of the plans, which would be the five.
now,
And
let me
that-
ask
that
you
would be
this.
my
Let me ask you this.
Thank you.
If they say they have an illness and they're on the HMO and they're in September and our renewal is when? Like when we start talking like,
Open enrollment, what is open enrollment?
when do we do it? October? So if this is a question for you guys, for super clarification for me. I think I know the answer, but super clarification. During that open enrollment, can't they switch to the PPO? Even though, even though they have an existing illness, say they've got cancer and they've been struggling since July on their HMO. They're ready for a PPO. In October, can't they make the switch to the PPO and start paying? If they see they're gonna need that kind of coverage?
Yes, ma'am, I
Yes.
can.
It would go in effect in
There'll be a
January.
rescue
It would
moment.
go
There'll be a
effect
rescue
in
moment.
January, so every October, each employee has the opportunity
To
to
change
re-enroll
plans.
and change plans. Correct?
So that way,
We also have a cancer plan
Correct.
that they can also buy into during that open enrollment as well. Is that correct?
They can, but there is a pre-existing clause on that.
On that one.
Okay.
so, I'm leaning with, two of my board members on each side, one on each side, with the HMO.
Mr. Cummings, in your health insurance plan, was there the emergency room only provision and restriction, like what we're talking about with this?
Out of state.
Out of state?
Yes, and let me give you a little history why I switched. You know my son Eric, he got sick at 2, he got encephalitis, brain encephalitis. And at the time, I had regular Blue Cross Blue Shield with the 80/20. He was in the hospital for several months, so that bill went way beyond $100,000 with me having to pay the 20%.
Right.
So it got to be very cost prohibitive for my family and I. So I switched the very next year to the HMO plan where I did not have to have all these out-of-pocket costs and all these deductibles, these high
Right.
deductibles and things, and it was beneficial for the family. So, I mean, we're trying to make great decisions for families because these people, our employees haven't gotten big raises, and we're not in an area where they can afford. Health costs are going up. Let's face that. So we have to be in a situation where it's going to be beneficial for everybody.
And I think in recruiting, the fact that we offer a free plan
Right.
where they don't have to pay anything, and then if they have a family and they want to buy up into a PPO, to me, that's still a very good recruiting tool.
Correct.
The fact that we have a free plan at all.
And the good part too is that, we've got such stability in our risk management department where employees can actually call and get some good advice from these folks. Like, okay, here's where I am, Nancy Seaman and Lori, here's where I am, this is my illness. Help me understand what's the best way to go. And there's great consultants right here in the district that can help our employees
Absolutely.
to know. They're not like sitting out there not knowing what to do because they do have great, wise people to go to for help, to know when to change plans. And that's a plus for our district because we've had the same people there for a long time who know this business.
The
And-
education piece is going to be a big thing of what would be in our plan that we would start working on now. We would have to get out there to every school, every department, and educate them fully on what the HMO means to them and what are those best options for each person. And yes, Thomas's office, they are wonderful. They dedicate staff to coming in, taking phone calls, to be available in addition to our team to help people understand what's the right decision for them, particularly in a year when we have such a significant change on the horizon, as well as trying to educate the providers in the community as it's a big change for them to know that the school district's moving.
And Thomas, your office will help us connect with those providers so they understand, correct?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And that's the other key piece to the education in the community is if this volume of people makes a PPO to an HMO change, the physicians, the hospitals, pharmacies, everybody needs to be made aware of that. We've got a great relationship with the physician community through another program that we administer here in Marion County. So that would be a top priority for us. And if I may, two points, Mr. Cummings, to your comment about the HMO and out-of-pocket liability. If alternate A becomes your preference, there is no change to any of the benefits that currently we are offering to those employees district-wide. So your deductibles don't go up. Your copays stay the same. The sole differentiator is the network PPO to HMO.
As long as they're in Marion County, 'cause the majority of the doctors participate in the HMO plans.
There's only one or two that don't.
So their world will not change here as they know it. unless they have a major illness, and then it might start to change because there are doctor options, and the Mayo Clinic's not an option, but, I guess Shands still is an option.
And
They are
Moffitt's
in network.
not.
Correct.
They are in network.
And I remember a time when we didn't have Mayo, by the way.
I do too.
So we had, that wasn't an option for anybody at
Right,
that
and we were
time.
happy with when it was.
Second point I wanted to make, Ms. Stacy, was to your comment about, hey, it's October, if I want to make a change, can I do that? Of course you can for a January 1st effective date. The other piece, because of the Affordable Care Act, there's still no subjectivity to pre-existing condition exclusions. If someone were to make that network change, PPO to HMO or vice versa, there would not be subjectivity to
Even
claim
before,
denials.
the Affordable Health Plan, within groups, the group plans didn't have pre-existing clauses then either, did they?
Some of them did.
Some
Because the
prior
ones
to
that I was
ACA,
involved in, there was no
pre-existing condition
there was no pre-existing on the groups that I belonged to in the past.
Some did. Did I answer your question, Mr. Rohr?
Yes, you did, and I'd like to hear from Ms. Boston Ellis, just because I continue to be really concerned about how we can
Stretch it.
how we can, what can we actually afford to absorb to have the least amount of impact as possible?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a very interesting conversation to follow this morning, and very important to not only the district, but our employees as well. What I had shared with you a couple of meetings ago is that when Lori and I had originally talked about an increase, we went ahead and put it in the budget to reflect half of a year increase. So our plan is a 12-month plan, but we are on a fiscal year. So we went ahead and put that in the budget. So an estimate of about a 10% increase from January through June. So that is in our budget currently. But the big issue will be the impact it has on the full calendar year, which would be in the 2021 year. Keeping in mind that we would also have maybe a potential another increase as well. But we do have the ProShare that is currently being reserved of 1.7 million. So we can immediately offset some of that increase on the ProShare, but then it goes away. There's no more ProShare. So it's a one-time hit. So I hope that answered your question.
It does. It helps a lot, and, this issue is not going to go away. I mean, we're hoping that we have a good year in claims this coming year, but there's no guarantee of that. And so we could be sitting here next year with the same conversation. And if the employee is not going to notice the change in benefits, and they're going to have the same benefits, there'll be some education moving into this HMO. I just think it's the best option for us. And if they want the PPO, they can buy up to Plan 2.
They still have the option.
They still have the
You
option.
can get the other one if they want it.
I was at I want to share a little, very short story with the board. I was at a business that has one of our employees that's working on a summer job. It's a gentleman. And he goes, you're Miss Stacy, right? And I said, yes. He goes, hi. I went over and spoke with him. He's at a cash register. And he said, I work for the school system. I'm a teacher. And he told me where he taught. And he said, what's going to happen with our insurance? He said, I'm really worried about that. And I said, well, we're having discussions about it. Because he told me a little bit about the rumor. And I said, no, we haven't made a decision. We're having a meeting Monday. And you can inform your teachers. They can listen in because they'll be able to hear, they can get this tape or whatever. He said, okay. He goes, our employees are so cool. He goes, well, I know we really haven't had a rate increase in a long time, and I guess we know it's kind of eventually inevitable, but we just can't afford it on our income. And he says, but I understand your side. So I really think that particular person will be happy about the HMO because he does have that option. It's not going to change his world, and he's not going to have a rate increase, and but it was so interesting. It was so nice talking to him where he said, I understand, but yet I'm in pain, But this way, I think he'll understand that we went to something that won't cause him really a lot of pain, but it'll save us a lot of money. And I think he'll be happy about what we came to here.
And none of us are happy about it, and the marketing piece is going to be huge, the education piece about the HMO. And then also, again, reiterating to employees, if we want to try to get out of this hole at some point, anything that we can do, yes, on the proactive wellness side is going to be helpful. People, when they're faced with a challenge and a decision that they really don't like, but they know they have to absorb, it also helps to have an offset of, well, to keep this from getting any worse or to hopefully improve it over time, here's what can be done.
We've also
So-
given them the teledoc
Right,
issue that's
and
gonna
that was a
help them
big,
with some of their
yeah,
co-payments
I love
and
that.
stuff, too,
I
so
love that,
That's a big help.
yes.
So that's
I will
the
be
ben-
using
Is
Tele.
that the benefits, the plan overview?
And Mr. Buss, is there any way to increase the amount of the preemptive things, the wellness opportunities that you all offer? You know, even something as simple as yoga, which was fabulous that you all gave to us. Any extra things like that? Can we add those things
Mammograms
in?
on Saturdays, too, I think that came out of that.
Absolutely, and I'll go ahead and share with you, we've met with local radiologic providers, and there has been tremendous interest for a Saturday mammography special school board opportunity, so that's in development for the month of October. Our wellness coordinator, Laura Lingle, who you've met
Yes.
in the past, she is constantly looking for, based on our claims analysis, areas of where we can focus additional wellness program emphasis. Cardiovascular health is a key piece. Yoga to that effect, right, is a calming measure as you consider blood pressure, right? But our main focus in our gym to the program has been diabetes management and education. Due to the comorbidities of diabetes, that continues to be focus number one and really has proven to be the best return on your investment of any program. So that'll remain our star. But subsequent programs, we're always looking for new ones as we go forward. But I think she's done a great job of prioritizing based on where your claims risk is. What else are we doing and how? And what resources are you applying to that? So we're real proud of your program, and I think the district really has gotten a lot from
The
it.
insurance team did a really good job. Thanks, Beth.
So I think ultimately, the goal has always been to remove any barriers to care, which on Plan 1, they would still, as Thomas said,
Could you speak into the
have all
microphone?
the benefits that they've always had, so nothing changes. They still can go to the doctor as they always have at those cost shares, in addition to the introduction of Teladoc. So we've not removed the barriers to care. The remaining concern would be whether or not plans 2 through 4 would be picked up, so those people would be held harmless as well, which obviously you have to make that financial decision, but it's always our preference that everybody gets picked up, so there aren't some that can't stay where they are, and then they create those migration concerns.
That education piece will, in informing them with the HMO that you have to have a primary doctor, your primary doctor will make the referrals out to whomever you need to get to. So, and then again, still pushing the wellness front with the gyms, with the, all the other things that are there. So they're really not, our employees are not losing a lot. They're really kind of gaining some access to some other areas, correct?
It's just a different way of
Of
getting
doing
to
it.
where they got
Exactly.
previously.
So what we may want to do, because they will all now have to have a primary care physician, and some of them may not, we may want to reach out to our primary care physicians. Number one, who is taking new patients? And number two, then provide that list to our employees so that it will be easy for them to get a primary care physician. And, there are some large groups that have several primary care physicians, so maybe we just make that contact, let them know we're going to the HMO, let them know that we do have employees that will need primary care, and see what they can do for us and provide that list.
Because I don't want to create anxiety
No,
among the district. And I was in Baltimore the other week, and I got a phone call in Baltimore, hey, y'all getting rid of my insurance? No.
that rumor, that
You know,
rumor mill.
And that's not what we
People
want.
are on
We
edge.
want to take the stress out of this whole process.
Yeah.
For everybody.
And they probably need everybody probably needs primary care anyway.
Well, and I have
Push
to
that.
tell you all that when I met with Ms. Lively last week to go over the presentation for today, she shared with me that her staff, and Nancy, thank you, you and everybody you work with, they've got everything lined up for the education piece, so they're prepared and ready to go.
In a typical year, even before changes that are this significant, with the assistance of Barrett Liner and Bus, we've done, 120 or so meetings, 130 meetings. It's very time-intensive. You know, you have to get time at the schools and have them allocate time just to have that topic discussed so people do understand. They meet with them individually. We usually have lab time at least once a week. We use MTC so people can come in on their own time anytime they want to work with the technology piece of picking their benefits. So we know we're going to have to step that up even further this year. But I think it's probably the most balanced choice for you financially, as well as still giving every employee their choice of what they have, assuming that you opt to pick up the increase for everybody at the $5 million figure, and again, with the potential of the offset.
In terms of sharing with the people that will reach out to us, if the federal tax is waived again and we come to an agreement with Advent that's helpful, what will that do to the rates? Will they then be
Your best case scenario, give
prorated?
us our
Yeah.
best case scenario.
We need some
That's what
sunshine.
Nancy and I need. Our personality requires that, please.
Their DNA.
19.19% is your overall increase across all 4 plans.
Okay.
The combined ACA and Advent Health factor of that 19.19 reflects 7.8%, in excess of $6 million.
Right.
So it's significant.
And then the federal tax is a million something, wasn't it?
Well,
Because
that's
we were thinking it
included-
was
that's
2.7.
included in that.
Oh, that's already included.
That's
Okay,
Put that
included in
2% in this.
okay, all right.
But there's no,
Guarantee with.
no, and I mean,
think
in
well,
all
sort of.
honesty, as I said, with Advent Health, it is to our community's benefit to have a fabulous hospital, and to think that the 5.1 rate will go away is unrealistic. And, you know, there are some things that our community needs from our community hospital, which is Advent. So to be able to work with us in some way, but we're not going to see a 5.1 decrease.
No.
It will, in my,
Maybe 2.5.
it will come somewhere, you know, in the middle of that.
Right.
But it'll probably raise its head again.
Oh, yeah.
We're all
as
we're all
a-
in consensus
as a
right
gonna-
now.
Yeah, we are in
With the
consent.
HMO.
I think we're good.
Well, I want to be clear, so you would prefer the HMO
Yes.
over the PPO, and are we also talking about?
It's what we can afford.
the increase across all the plans for the HMO?
Yes. Which would be, before we leave that,
Alternate
Nicole's
A.
trying to type. Would be alternate A, so the increase to the board, if things stay at 19.1, would be $5 million. 5 million,
85,089,000.
That's the correct figure, yes,
And
ma'am.
anything less beyond any of those other changes with the hospital, with the insured
This is
fee.
in addition.
And you have the offset as well, if that's something that
Yeah.
gets determined is going to be
Okay.
utilized into the increase.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
So, Mr. Gibbs, will you clarify consensus versus a vote, just because we know we have people listening?
The
that may-
consensus is fine, as well. The board's just providing direction to staff on how to proceed. They can't vote officially until it comes back to the board for approval.
We were scheduled for the 23rd, is the
Right.
23rd of July, the next board meeting. So
And it-
we'll bring it to the board at that time for final approval.
Will it be on consent agenda?
Agenda.
It will, since we had the presentation. Mhm.
I will say to the public or anyone that's listening, I feel very comfortable with my consensus decision. I'm extremely comfortable with it, and I want to thank everyone for all the work they did to help me come to this decision, and I cannot foresee changing my mind at all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That being said, any public comment concerning the health insurance update? There being none, board concerns. Ms. McCall, we're going to start with you.
I want to thank the team that came in on Friday once the scores were announced, that worked so hard to get us information. And I have always been a believer that the sooner we retain children, the better. So I do think that we need to begin to look at that. I have always agreed with that. But this is like moving the Titanic. And so the incremental moves I am pleased with. The incremental moves that we may be righting this ship, I think is cause for celebration. But I do understand we still have a long way to go. But I want to thank all of the teachers, the principals that worked so hard. I think we're going to have some pleasant surprises with Reddick Collier being one of them. But we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to change it overnight. And I hope that we're moving in the right way. And I would always hope that we are looking at counties that are at the top of the state's list, and how are they doing it, and how are they maintaining? I mean, that's looking at those benchmark programs is what we should be doing. So, but again, thank you and congratulations. And I wish everybody a very safe and healthy and fun 4th of July.
Ms. Stacy?
You know, I'm going to just make one brief comment. When we're getting improvement, the state is getting improvement. We still, when I look on this chart, this 2019 chart, we're still further behind the state than we were in 2017, but a little bit further ahead than we were in 2018. So we're kind of running in place is what concerns me. As much money as we've put in, we've brought in area superintendents, we've brought in consultants, and I would like to give some kudos on a positive note. I know some people think that to be positive, you got to be a cheerleader and kind of just cheer on whatever, but I'm a realist, and I do not believe that facts are negative. I believe that facts, as long as we ignore the facts, we're never going to get out of this, off this Titanic, that we keep arranging the chairs on this Titanic. We just keep rearranging the chairs. What I would like to talk about is the Reddick performance. And when I think back, when Mr. Yancey was here, guess who was in charge of curriculum? I rest my case.
Ms. Thorne?
I shared my input earlier, so I don't have a lot to add to that. Beyond, again, extending my thanks to the employees that are working so hard every day on behalf of kids. We all want this to get better. We see some glimmers of hope. Our board continues to take on every challenge. There's nothing that we're not willing to face. I'm grateful for our grit and determination. You know, those master board trainings that we've been attending are very deep and comprehensive, and it challenges us as a board at the executive level in terms of how we approach things and how to work better together. So we're on the right track, but the data speaks for itself. I love data for that reason, because you can look at what's going right and celebrate it, and then you can then look at the challenges and focus on those without feeling overwhelmed, like the sky's falling Chicken Little style, because it's not. We've got some great things in place that we're going to continue to build on. And I'm really excited personally. I don't have a lot of elementary experience compared to the rest of my experience, but seeing that data of the K2, that to me is setting the stage. And I'm really happy about that. So, yes, have a very safe and fun for Independence Day. That's something worth celebrating.
Dr. Mayor?
I'll just say again how extremely proud I am of everybody, all 7,000 of our employees, because, our teachers have the front line, but, when the kids come to school and the school campus looks great and they have an awesome breakfast and they're to school on time, everybody has a piece of the puzzle, and this was a team effort. And when we talk about recruiting and retaining teachers and employees, celebrating their successes goes a long way to that. Even, sometimes when we're in the financial pinch that we are now, and we may not be able to give the raises that everybody deserves, but appreciation to employees who work hard every day goes even longer. And just to let them know that their efforts are appreciated, the results in a lot of cases are more than we even expected. But to say that it's still not good enough, I think, is a disservice to a lot of folks. And I will just end with, again, I'm so incredibly proud and so grateful to all 7,000 of our folks. Thank you.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah, just wanted to put out there, as of today, any board member travel now has to be approved that's at or in excess of $500. So if any of you know that you're going to be attending a conference or going out of town, please start that process a little earlier, because we have to get it on a board agenda now if the cost is going to go over $500 before you can take that trip. So just wanted to put that out there. And we'll have a form that's being developed so that it can get filled out.
Mr. Presbitino? I'm closing out today. We want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. And I too, want to celebrate the gains, the progress that we've made in this district with the scores on all these schools. And we saw some extremely bright spots, especially with Reddick. That is tremendous what happened out at Reddick, and we may need to look at Reddick and model or mimic those things that happen in Reddick to carry across the district. I believe in celebrating positives, but I don't want to rest on positives, just a few, because we still have a long way to go. And I'm confident, I'm extremely confident that we have the people in this district that can turn this ship. But it's going to be a slow turn. It's not going to be an overnight turn, as Ms. McCall said. It's not going to be done in one semester. It's going to take some time. We didn't get into this situation overnight, so we're not going to come out of it overnight. But we're making the strides, and I'm looking forward to what's going to happen. I want the teachers and every person to know that you are the best in what you've done in making these gains. Celebrate it, but we got to get back on the track and start running again, because we got some more gains to get. We have some more progress to earn, and we have some more students that's coming in. And we want to make sure that not that we just make little small incremental gains. They're important, but we want to make sure that we're making Marion County School District the best district that it could be. I'm a competitive type person. I want to see us not just sitting in the top 10. I want us to be the top of the top 10. That's just my personality.
Leave it better than we found.
My personality is forget the silver, go for the gold. And we need to have that mentality in our school district, in all of our schools and all of our, everywhere. I don't care if you're a bus driver, you need to be the best bus driver in the country. But we're great there. I also want to talk about this insurance. We want to do what's best for everybody involved, and never want to be a burden on families and our employees who are out there in the trenches every day and don't deserve to have to carry an undue burden. And I think this board has made a good decision, extremely good decisions, difficult decision, but that's what you elected us for, to make these decisions, and hopefully that they benefit the greater number of people, and that it will be positive for everybody. We want everybody, if you're sick, to be able to go to the doctor and not have to worry about, can you go to the doctor? If you got the flu, can you go get a flu shot? We want to make sure those things, because healthy people are going to make our district healthy. and make sure our schools are healthy. So I thank the board for that. Praying for Miss King, who's traveling. We know that she's enjoying herself, we hope. And I'm hoping everyone will have a safe, extremely safe 4th of July. I said this yesterday to my church. I'm gonna say it again, and I hope it comes out right. But if you must drink out of the solo cups, I think those that listen know what I'm talking about. If you just have to have a solo cup, stay at home and drink in solo cup.
Don't play with fireworks.
Extremely.
Good point.
Please.
Comes in here with a missing finger, we're gonna know.
So please be safe. We don't want to see any bad press or anything about someone getting hurt.
Or any insurance deductibles.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. So please be responsible this holiday, and I pray everybody have a safe and great Independence Day. That being said, what time is it?
Get the omens.
9:21. Meeting adjourned at 10:21.